When problem solving as a tool for addressing complaints does not result in a resolution, or in cases where a complainant may prefer the IRM to undertake a compliance review process to look at the complaint, the IRM will resort in a compliance review process during which it will review whether the African Development Bank Group has complied with its own processes and procedures as it pertains to the project. Let's learn a little bit more about the compliance review process.
The IRM's compliance review process is designed to examine whether the AFDB has complied with its policies and procedures related to a bank finance project or operation. In cases where non-compliance is established, and where this can be linked to harm or even potential harm, we'll recommend ways for the bank to address the non-compliance, and if needed, then repair or redress the harm, often in close cooperation with the project developer, project sponsor. The entire complaints handling process starts with the complaint itself. And when the IRM receives a complaint, it first does an internal check to make sure that it meets our criteria. Now, this is a fairly low bar. Essentially, we're looking to confirm, does the complainant have their contact information included? That the nature of the complaint is documented, what's it actually about? That the complaint actually relates to an AFDB finance project, and that the complainants themselves have made a reasonable effort to attempt to address the issue at the local or the project level before actually approaching the IRM, what we call good faith efforts. If all of these criteria are met, the complaint is then officially registered, and AFDB management then provides an initial response to the complaint to the IRM. After this, the complaint process follows a rather systematic process. The first step is an eligibility assessment. In other mechanisms, they refer to this as their appraisal stage. The eligibility assessment typically involves a site visit, and this is done to evaluate if there is what is termed prima facie evidence of harm, or in other words, whether at first glance harm may exist, and if so, whether this can plausibly be linked to the bank's non-compliance with its own policies. Now, this is not yet an investigation, but it helps us to better understand the nature of the complaint and the sorts of stakeholders involved. But following the publishing of our eligibility report, and everything is transparent that we do within the IRM, we then move to a planning and expertise selection phase. This investigation planning stage is often an overlooked step, but it's critical for the effectiveness of the entire process. It's at this stage that the IRM develops investigation tools specific to the complaint and starts considering what type of subject matter expertise may be needed to secure in that area in order to ensure the integrity and efficiency of the investigation. Once the planning is complete, the formal investigation into the complaint begins. And this stage focuses on assessing if the complaint, in fact, has failed to comply with the relevant policies and procedures, and if any harm has occurred or is likely to occur as a result. The investigation may include interviews with stakeholders, desk research, observation, and it generally concludes with a draft report that presents the IRM's findings and recommendations. And then this report is then shared with bank management and the complainant for their comments, allowing them the opportunity to point out any misinterpretations or other areas of concern at that point. After the IRM receives these comments back, it carefully analyzes them based on the evidence available. If we make any necessary changes, before we then issue a final compliance review report. And this comes complete with recommendations. After this, then bank management then reviews the IRM's final report and recommendations. And if it has found in non-compliance, if the IRM has found non-compliances, it then asks management to develop what is called a management action plan to address IRM's recommendations. And then in the final report, if relevant, management's action plan are then presented to the board for their review and decision. After the management action plan is endorsed by the board, it then falls back to the IRM to monitor its implementation by the management and by the project implementing unit until it is successfully completed. And then this, of course, concludes the entire process.